Changing your bathroom vanity is going to give you a huge upgrade to your bathroom. I'm going to show you how to change this out today. First thing I'm going to do is take the doors off, get them out of my way. Right, before you end up with a mess, you want to shut off your water valves. Luckily here I have these quarter turn valves. You might have the kind you have to crank all the way. Hopefully you'll get lucky and it'll actually shut the water off. Get yourself something to catch the water, because when you disconnect the water lines, there's definitely water going to be coming out. Just so you know, these are not like mattress tags. When you put in supply lines under a sink, you are allowed to take these off. If you have these plastic pipes underneath, you should be able to just loosen them up by hand. If you have the metal ones, you might need to get some channel locks or sometimes even a hacksaw to get them loose. Maybe I'll get lucky and find a diamond ring in here. No jewelry. Once you get all your pipes out of there, you want to shove something in here. Just make sure it doesn't get in there too far to block the pipe. This is just to stop any sewer gas smell from coming into your house while you're working. It may look cool on TV, but you really don't want to start taking a sledgehammer to stuff. Pull the screws out. It's going to make it much easier. The next thing you want to do is cut the caulk around the vanity top, and then hopefully you'll be able to just lift it right out. Let's see. Vanity tops are usually adhered to the vanity just by using caulk. I can't really get my knife in here, even though this finish work here is a little sloppy. I'm going to take just a thin piece of wire, feed it through, and grab it from the inside and use it like a saw, and hopefully be able to cut some of this caulk. You'd be surprised at how well caulk holds. I have on rare occasion had to get a car jack underneath and push up on the sink to get them to pop loose, but I think this one's going to go. Don't rush it, and like I said, that all looks cool on TV. You want to do as little damage as possible, because anything you ruin, you're going to have to fix. All right, the water lines are coming up through the base of the cabinet. I'm just going to trim the cabinet so I can get it out for now. Unfortunately, my shutoff valves are leaking a little bit, so I'm going to cap the lines. It's real easy. I'm going to use SharkBite fittings, and it's going to make installing the new vanity easier anyway. When you see a valve like this with a nut on the end by the pipe, that means it's a compression fitting. Even if you loosen this nut off and pull the valve out, you're still not going to be able to get the nut off. It's better to just cut the pipe, so that's what I'm going to do. I've already shut off the water and drained everything down, so I'm just going to cut the pipes off. Next, I'm going to take this SharkBite tool, and it's going to put a little bevel on the edge of the pipe here, so that way when we slide the SharkBite caps on, it's not going to cut the O-ring. You just slide it onto the pipe and spin it around, push down a little bit, and you'll see it puts a nice bevel on the end of the pipe. I'm also going to clean up the end of the pipe with a little bit of emery cloth, just to make sure I don't have any little sharp edges that can cut the O-ring. One more thing you use this tool for is it's a gauge. Slide it on the pipe and make a mark, and that'll show you how far the fitting needs to go on to ensure you have a good seal. Then you just take your SharkBite fitting and slide it on. And you'll see it comes down to the mark. That way you know you have a good seal. If you're going to be using SharkBite fittings, it's a good idea to have a tool like this when you go to take them off. You just slide it on, give it a good squeeze, and the fitting comes off. They sell little plastic ones, but this thing's way better. I'm ready to install the vanity now, and when you're doing remodeling, it's all about problem solving. I had a lot of issues that I had to deal with when I went to put this vanity in and make sure it fit right. First of all, the pipes where they came up out of the floor were too far away from the wall for the way the vanity was constructed. So I had to notch out the bottom of the vanity. It's not going to be an issue because there's a bottom shelf that's going to cover that. And I shifted the pipes over a little bit. Another problem I ran into is the bottom of the vanity has molding and the base of it flares out a little bit. So the bottom of the vanity is a little bit bigger than the case itself. And this room is really out of square. So I also had to notch out the drywall on the one side of the vanity for that molding to sit into. Did I need to do that? Is there another solution? Sure. Another solution would have been rip the entire wall down and reframe it. Okay, that leads me into the next room, into the hallway. I'm not going to do all that. Nobody's going to see that notched out drywall until they rip this vanity out when they get tired of the color. Another thing I came across with this vanity is the back of the bottom shelf is notched out to allow for water supply lines and drain line clearance. I didn't really like the way that was set up because it leaves a big gap, and if you put something in the cabinet, it could fall behind there, and then you're going to have a heck of a time getting it out. So I cut this block of wood to fit into the spot where that big notch is. I put some blocks of plywood underneath to support this. I'll paint it to match and put it in once the vanity is installed. Once you get your vanity set into place, you want to get a level and check it front to back on both sides. And also check the levels side to side in the front and in the back. If your vanity is out of level, it's going to affect the way your sink drains, so take the time to get it nice and level. If you need to deal with an out of level situation, just get some wooden shims from the hardware store and put them underneath the corners of the cabinet or behind the back wall of the cabinet where you're screwing it into the wall. Whenever I'm installing cabinets, I like to use cabinet screws. They're truss head screws, and they have a really big head on them that's nice and flat. It gives you a big surface area. It's basically a screw with a built-in washer. Don't use drywall screws to install cabinets, especially the ones you buy at the home centers, because those cabinets are made out of particle board, MDF. A drywall screw can go right through it and just wreck the cabinet. So get you some good truss head cabinet screws. Instead of a stud finder, I like to use one of these toddler lock magnets. They work much better. You just move it along the wall until it sticks. Now you know there's going to be a stud there because there's a drywall screw or a drywall nail there. I'm lucky I don't need any shims or anything here. I'm just going to screw it tight to the wall using the cabinet screws. Before you attach your vanity top, you want to do a test fit. This thing's really heavy. It would be nice if I had some friends, but it's just me. The lip of the sink is preventing the vanity top from going all the way down where it needs to be. So now I have to decide what I'm going to do about that. The problem's being complicated by this corner being out of square. I'm going to be tiling this wall up about 6 or 8 inches So instead of trying to notch out the cabinet again, I'm just going to cut back some of the drywall here so the top can slide into the wall a little bit. It's not the most elegant solution, but it's pretty common when installing countertops to do that. Even if you're not going to tile the backsplash, notching out the drywall to get the countertop in is okay, because you're going to have to at least caulk it. As long as you take your time, make a nice clean cut, your counter slides in there, throw a bead of caulk down, you'll be good to go. The next thing we need to do is attach our countertop. I'm going to be using this stuff here. It's called Lexol. You'll find it in the hardware stores next to the caulk. It's a little bit more expensive, but I think it does a better job. I'm not really sure what's in this, but it dries really strong, it holds up under wet conditions, and it doesn't get yellow like silicone does. So I'm going to use this to hold the countertop down. Ordinarily at this point, you'd want to install your faucets before you put the countertop in. It's just easier than reaching up behind underneath the sink inside the cabinet. But I'm going to be putting tile backsplash up here, so I'd rather just have the faucets out of my way when I'm putting the tile on. So I'm going to just install the top without the faucets. This isn't a real complicated process. For most countertops, you just squirt down your adhesive, whether you're using this or just regular silicone, blob it here and there, set the countertop in, and leave it alone for a day until it cures. Just a 3-piece faucet that I'm going to be installing, and if you look at your handles, one of them is going to be labeled hot, and that's just so they go left and right because the handles need to work in a certain direction. The big fitting on the faucet is going to connect to the shutoff valve coming out of the wall, and the small part here is going to connect to this contraption that connects the 2 handles to the faucet. You're going to have a washer and some kind of ring. They're all slightly different, but the way this one works is you stick it through the sink, you put the washer on, you tighten this nut up against it, not real tight, and then you just use a screwdriver to snug it up. I'm going to connect the supply hoses before I drop it in. It's just a little bit easier to do it up here. You don't need to get crazy tightening these up. There's a rubber washer in there. Just snug it up a little bit. These copper lines are really soft, so make sure you use 2 wrenches and just, like I said, little snug, that's all you need. You don't have to get carried away. Check your instructions. For the most part, faucets nowadays, you don't need to put anything underneath of them because they have a gasket. Sometimes you need plumber's putty, but in this case, there's already a foam gasket there, so we don't need anything. Have a washer that goes on, so we won't need any plumber's putty. And then once I put this through, this bracket goes on from underneath, like so, and then there's a nut that goes on like this. Normally they're going to give you a tool to tighten it up. You just slide it on and turn it. Hand tight should be good enough. You just want it so the faucet won't move. You could put a screwdriver in here and crank on it, but that's probably not a good idea. You should be able to get it tight enough by hand. This contraption is going to connect to the faucets and to this. Depending on the manufacturer, they all work a little bit different, but for the most part, you just slide it on and it locks in place. For this one, to get them apart, you just squeeze on both sides and you can pull it back off. Now we just hook up our supply lines. And again, don't get carried away with these. There's a rubber gasket, just snug them up a little bit. Now we need to put the pop-up into the sink. And like I said, this one is a quick release. I need to unscrew this part just to get it out of the way for now. Most of the sink drains now come with a rubber gasket that goes right underneath the drain into the sink. I don't like using those because they cause it to raise up and then you get a little puddle of water around the drain. I'd rather use plumber's putty. You can use this if you want, but I'm going to use plumber's putty. Take the nut and the washer off the bottom and just take your plumber's putty, rip a little piece off and roll it into a little snake. Once you have your plumber's putty rolled into a snake, just wrap it around the drain and you want it to look something like that. And as you tighten the nut up from underneath, more and more that plumber's putty will squeeze out. This rubber gasket goes in with the narrow side up towards the sink. And on the bottom of it, I'm just going to put a little bit of Vaseline so that it can slide against the nut a little easier, so when I'm tightening it, it doesn't twist. It's not really helping seal anything, it's just going to let the rubber slide against the nut. And even though this has flat spots on it to put a wrench, you shouldn't need a wrench. You should be able to just hand tighten this, and that should be enough to keep it from leaking. It's only plastic, so you don't want to go crazy and end up cracking it. After you test fit and cut all your pipes if you need to, I like to use a little bit of sealant on these. I use PTFE paste, plumber's paste. It works great. It really helps these plastic fittings get a good seal. Just kind of goop it around there. Up on here, stuff is really messy, and then I like to put a little on the threads, just wipe it all off once it's all tightened up. You want to leave everything loose until you get it all situated where you want it. Try and have the pipes as straight as possible going into the drains so you're not off to one side or twisted or something. And then you can slowly snug them up. And again, it's only plastic. Shouldn't need a wrench on these at all. Once you get your drains tightened up, the last thing to do is leak check everything. If you found this video helpful, hit the thumbs up button. Let me know I'm putting out something you're interested in or that you found helpful. And be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so when I put out other home improvement videos, you'll get notified. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them down below.